Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 2021 The Bee Cause Project and Whole Kids Foundation Q&A for the Bee Grant webinar. I'm going to give just maybe another minute or so, 30 seconds to a minute to let people join. Give everybody a chance to sign on and get situated before we dive in. While we wait, if you want to put into the chat box where you're calling in from, we would love to see where everyone is. All right. It's awesome. We always love to ask. It's really great to see where everyone's calling from. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Stephanie Porto. I'm the program manager with Whole Kids Foundation, and I am joined by Emily and Tammy of the Bee Cause Project.
Hi.
I will let them introduce themselves.
I'm Emily. I'm the educational director at the Bee Cause Project, and I'm going to take you through your frequently asked questions today. And Tammy's going to be taking on any Q&A in the Q&A function.
Thank you, Emily. Yep, Tammy Enright, the executive director at the Bee Cause. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy you took the time to attend the webinar tonight.
All right, so we'll get started. A couple of housekeeping items. We will, as Emily said, she's going to lead you through some of our commonly asked questions. Whatever questions that you have throughout this webinar, or if we aren't getting to your question, drop it into the Q&A function of the Zoom bar. We're going to reserve the chat for just other convo sharing, commentary, and like where you are from. But the questions specifically that you have and you want answered about your program or about the application, please put into the Q&A. The webinar will be recorded, and we will share a link to the recording for everyone that's registered for the webinar, whether you attended or not, and it will also be available on our website as well as on the Bee Cause website afterwards. So our agenda, what we're going to cover today. We're going to give you a little bit of a high level of the Whole Kids Foundation Garden Grant Program. We're going to talk about eligibility for our Garden Grant for our Bee Grant Program, excuse me. Emily's going to cover a little bit of information high level about the two different types of our Bee Grant, which grant to choose based on the programming and the goals that you have. She will cover the frequently asked questions, the timeline for the application process and grant notification. And then if we have time for it, we'll offer a little bit of a reminder on some basics of how to apply through our grant portal called Smart Simple. That's where you're going to fill out and submit your online application. And then we will have time for any additional questions to be submitted and to be covered live during the webinar. So the Whole Kids Foundation Garden Grant Program, we like to share a little bit about it because it makes such a great complement to the Bee Grant Program. It is a $3,000 monetary grant to support an edible educational garden at schools and nonprofit organizations that support K through 12 age range. So any public school, nonprofit private school, or educational nonprofit organizations that serve youth in some capacity. That does also include like government, city entities, kind of like parks and recs or library systems. They're also eligible to apply in the US and in Canada. And if you have questions about the Garden Grant Program, you can email grants@wholekidsfoundation.org. It has a spring application window. So we are finalizing our 2021 Garden Grant, and the next window for this program will open on February 1st of 2022. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily to talk about the Bee Grant, the eligibility, and the most commonly asked questions that we get.
Thanks, Stephanie. So this is just a reminder of the highlights for the Bee Grant. So you can kind of check this off in your head that if you're in the United States or Canada, working with K-12 schools, nonprofit organization working with at least 10 children. And the bee program is used for an educational tool. So if you can answer yes to all those, keep rolling forward. So even after saying that, if you feel like you're outside of the box and you're not sure if you're eligible, you're welcome to email us at info@thebcause.org. And we can be more specific with you individually. It seems like there's a lot of different types of programs out there. And really what we seek and what the Whole Kids Foundation seeks is to make it as easy as possible, but at the same time, just making sure that we're adding new bees to the world and that we're supporting those bees and then passing that on to the education with the children, which is the reason we do it all. And then Stephanie, if you want to go forward. So if you're still not sure if you're eligible, think about if you have a 501c3 status. And if not, do you have a fiscal sponsor? If you're partnering with a business, that can be where your fiscal sponsor supports you as your backbone for this grant. If you're a private school, if you're a youth program, if you're a museum, essentially K-12 in as an educational entity, that you are good to go with us. So including homeschool, camps, museums, youth programs. So I hope that answers eligibility, but like I said, you're always welcome to email us and we can give you more information. So how do I get my bees approved? So think about with your school district or with your board, you need to start as the bee advocate, being passionate and knowledgeable about the program. We've said it before, we'll say it again, the getting your bees approved at the bee grant overview at thebcause.org is going to give you all the information that you would need to know exactly how to speak to a school district or your school board. And you're going to want to work with a reliable bee mentor. We'll talk a little bit more about that further in the slides, but be prepared to work with the school district and go through their approval process, because each district might have a different approval process, but knowing the backbone and knowing the background for it is the way to really get in there and get what you need done. And of course, your passion's going to come through when you have read all the information that you need to be ready for them. How do I handle safety? This was a very frequently asked question. If you'll notice in the picture, this is the signage provided by the Bee Cause and with your Whole Kids Foundation grant that'll be placed near your hive entrance or in your apiary if you have an outdoor hive. And your bee mentor should help you with this as far as placement. We also have the Bee Cause safety guide, which you should share with your families before installing the bees, just to give everybody a heads up and know what your preparation is and what your plan is for bringing the bees on campus. And that can be found at thebcause.org. And just a kind of a rule of thumb, having your school nurse be part of your bee team is just great advice as far as, she can give you information or he can give you information about who's allergic to bees in the school. Maybe that's the staff or volunteers or students. And if you're a different type of entity and not necessarily a school, you still might want to know who the employees are or who the volunteers are that are part of your group that are allergic to bees. But remember that bees are extremely docile and vegetarians. So, safety is definitely a concern. But it's also something that we've covered well in this document. And again, there's more information in the bee grant overview about safety of your bees and your students. How do I know if my original grant came from the Whole Kids Foundation and Bee Cause Project? If you want to email grants@wholekidsfoundation.org for that information, they can let you know if your original grant came from this. And what if I already have bees on campus? So if you've received the grant before, the bee grant, if you are a bee grant recipient, you're going to want to look at the renewal grant. And that is really there to help you improve your existing program. If it was not through Whole Kids and Bee Cause, then you're looking more at the traditional bee grant, which really could be used to add more hives to your existing, or you're looking at the traditional bee and in that the grant monetary stipend to expand your program, or improve your existing bee program. And just a reminder that the funds from that can be spent directly on your bee programming and bees, but they cannot be spent on field trips, travel, or real estate. A lot of people wanted to know about, can this grant be used for mason or native bees? And we love and support our little native pollinators and our little native bees. This grant is specific to honeybees, but the Bee Cause does provide programming for other types of bees throughout the year. That might include habitat restoration, native bee habitats, pollinator friendly gardening projects, all different kinds of things. So if you want to follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter for more information at the Bee Cause. And that way you can find out throughout the year other grants and other programming that we are offering. Can the funds be used to plant a bee garden? So if there is already a fully operating beehive at the location, those funds can be spent on a pollinator garden or educational materials. And in the budgeting portion of the Smart Simple, you'll find that you just have to provide a full breakdown of how those funds are going to be spent. But the application is there to prompt you to really have a plan and to think about that before you're fully involved and invested in the grant. Some friends still asked, how does the observation hive work? So it is inside of your school, the part that you see that is hanging in those two students were looking at it, but there is a hole that is drilled through the wall that goes out to where the bees will come and go. So when you're working with your bee mentor, you're going to work about where to place that hive so that the bees can still come and go, but on the inside, your students and your staff and the parents and everyone can still observe these amazing bees. Ideally, you want to place your hive facing south or southeast, not in direct sunlight. It can affect the temperature inside of the beehive. A low traffic area on the outside. Obviously, you want it at a high traffic area on the inside so that you can, all the bees can be seen by people and coming and going. But you definitely want the outside to be a place that doesn't have, not right in front of carpool. You would want it like on the back of the building or the side of the building. Wherever it is in your building, you want to make sure that the interior part is in a temperature controlled area to help the bees so that they don't overheat. It's a really different type of hive than a Langstroth traditional hive. And again, your bee mentor will be able to help you locate the right place. There's a really great video on our website called How to Install Your Live Bees in the Observation Hive video. And I did not even know before how they were installed. So watching this video before I worked with the Bee Cause gave me great insight as to how it's all done and how it should look. So if you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend it. And what should I look for in a bee mentor? So first of all, we highly recommend that you find a volunteer. You want to save your funds for your bees, for the materials and the things that you're going to need, or for your educational pieces. So if you can find someone that will volunteer to support your program, that's really going to benefit you and your students. You're going to want to find somebody that's a trained beekeeper, or at least an experienced beekeeper, someone who knows what they're doing. It could be somebody that's a member of your local beekeeping association. And I'm going to give you more information about how to get in touch with that. Someone that just has an interest in beekeeping education, and there are so many people out there that really do want to promote the love and the educational piece of bees, and someone that will be there to assist you on your journey. There is a document on our website called Bee Mentor Role and Responsibility document that you can share with someone that is considering working with you so that they kind of have an understanding of what that expectation will look like. So how do I find a bee mentor? You should contact your local beekeeping association. If you just look up local beekeeping association in the town or the city that's closest to you, you should find a list of them. Find out if there's a beekeeping conference held in your area. This is a great way to find local support. We recently had our beekeeping association conference here in Charleston, and it's literally just packed with people that just want to talk about bees and want to get out there and teach others about bees. This is a great website too. It's called Bee Culture, and it has all 50 states and Canada. It has all of the local beekeeping associations listed. So you can go in and search by your area. It's a great website. And if you just Google bee culture, it should come up for you. And just a reminder, there are lots of willing beekeepers out there. How does Pay It Forward fundraiser work? So I think Tammy talked about this in our last webinar, but essentially honey is ordered on consignment through the Bee Cause to help you raise money for your school or your program. You keep $5 per jar, and the Bee Cause uses the additional 10 to fund another program. You can order anytime throughout the year. There is a Pay It Forward document that gives you all the details on our website. And to order the honey, you're going to email info@the-bee-cause to get started with that. And can we sell our own honey and honeycomb from our Langstroth hives? Yes. I would work with your staff and your admin to create a honey sales event. Consider setting something up with parents to do a pre-order or just getting the word out there. Kids could create posters, make it a whole school event or a whole grade level event. Let families know when that honey or honeycomb will be available for sale. And your bee mentor could help with that harvest. If you've got suits for all your kids, or they can take turns helping with that harvest. What an amazing experience for them. And selling their honey. Do we need plexiglass or a fence around our hives? It's not necessary with the proper signage that you're going to get as part of your grant, as well as the placement of the hives, which is why having a solid bee mentor who's going to help you with that process. Consider that bees have a natural flight pattern. So they exit at the ground, they exit parallel to the ground and then fly approximately 4 to 6 feet, and then they go up. So when you install a plexi or a fence, just ensure that you're not impacting that natural flight pattern. It'll give your bees a harder time orienting. And the bee mentor, again, can help you make the decision with the bee advocate. And how do we handle spraying chemicals near the hives? This is kind of tough because I know a lot of schools especially are you're not always asked about that application, but you can reach out and speak directly to your technician and ask that they spray early in the morning or late in the afternoon. That's when your bees are home. They're not foraging as much during those times. You can also ask for a granular application. It provides less drift, meaning it's not drifting across the air in the same way that a spray would. You can always ask your technician to use an application that's non-toxic to pollinators. They do exist. Close the hive entrance the night before. After the sun has dried all the wet application, then you can reopen the next day. And if possible, you really can relocate your bees during those months when extreme spraying is done. A lot of schools and other types of nonprofits might need to consider, like if there's farming around you or crops that are growing, getting in touch with those farmers and finding out when are the high times that you're spraying, then maybe you can avoid some of that, knowing that up front. And what age range does the Bee Grant program target? All ages, all grade levels, and all abilities K-12. We provide lots of opportunities with the STEAM-based activities. We have full curricula, we have lesson plans, assessments, games, labs. Everything has an educator's guide provided, and that's also going to include standards. We use Common Core standards for ELA, and we use Next Generation Science for all of our science standards. That includes book club challenges, virtual field trips. We suggest citizen science at the different levels of what you might be working with at your school, and literature, and recently added film circle educator guides. And we really do target all grade levels, and adding more daily. So just a reminder on the timeline that your application opens September 1 and you have until October 15th to get the first portion completed. So that would be like the phase 1 portion. Then phase 2 of the grant application, you will be notified when you can begin phase 2. And then that application deadline is October 31st. You'll be notified of an award December 8th. And then all of your grant awards will be mailed out in February of 2022. And this was just a reminder of how to find those applications. You can go through the bcause.org and it's on our programs page, or you can go to wholekidsfoundation.org to the Honeybee Grant Program. And either way, you'll get to the right place to start your application. And then wholekidsfoundation.smartsimple.com is one way to get there as well. So grant notifications, all applicants will receive an email that notifies you, regardless of whatever the decision is, by 12/8. And you must sign the online grant agreement to accept your grant. That's a really big important thing to do to let us know that you are ready for bees. And then your grant package will be mailed in February of 2022. This was just a reminder on getting started. The application is at the wholekidsfoundation.smartsimple.com. And Stephanie, if you want to remind everybody what that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to apologize in advance if you hear my dog. There's just no way around it. So my apologies. So yeah, all applications must be submitted online in our grant portal, Smart Simple. So for those of you who have already started your application, then you are past the registration process. You've gotten in successfully. Am happy to answer questions specifically about, technicalities within the application, but I find that the part that gets people the most is the registration process. So if you are new to our system, if you have not received a Whole Kids Foundation and the Bee Cause Project Bee Grant in the past, or a Whole Kids Foundation Garden Grant, then you'll have to register both your school or organization and yourself to create an account. So you'll go to the portal, which you can access from the Bee Cause website or from our website. And if you are a returning applicant, you'll just use that same email and password that you had before. If you need support with your password, you need to reset it. You can either use the forgot password function on the page, or you can reach out to us at grants at Whole Kids Foundation. We take all kinds of grant inquiries and we're happy to help. If you're a new applicant, you're going to go to the same page, the login and registration page, but rather than signing in directly, you're going to have to use the register here button at the bottom to start that process. You will go through a series of steps, which I don't think we included too many photos of here, but if anyone has questions, please put them into the Q&A and we can try and adjust them. You will be prompted to do a search for either your NCES number, your EIN, or your CRA number if you are in Canada. The best advice I can give, generally high level, is to be liberal in your search terms when you're utilizing these database searches. The system is set up to give you very clear directions, so you'll know, you'll know what to do. But when searching for your particular number, it's usually best to lean towards including less information rather than more information. So rather than filling out every field that they give you in the search box functions, maybe stick with just the name of your organization or a word or two from your organization or school name. If it's something that has a unique name, you could stick with just that one. But if it's something with a more common name, the example I like to use is if you are at Jefferson Elementary, there's a lot of Jefferson Elementary, so you might just type in Jefferson and then choose either your city or state. This is also true for when you're searching as a Canadian organization or school. and a nonprofit as well. So keeping that in mind, that's usually a really helpful tool to ensure that you return a result that's going to give you the information that you need. And then once you register, if you're new to the system, you'll register, you'll go through it. You've only fully registered if you see this registration complete page. It's just like a confirmation of your submission to be registered. If you don't see this, it may not have taken. So a lot of troubleshooting can be offered if you email us at grants@wholekids. We see that a lot, so we're happy to help. I have a great intern who's great at answering these questions. So if there's any questions you all want to ask about anything Emily shared related to bees or to programming or to the technical aspect of getting in the system and getting set up, or even about the application, please put them in the Q&A. We can spend some time doing that. And then just a reminder of all of our contact info. If you don't think of your questions now, but you think of them, later on today, you can reach the BCause team at info@thebcause.org, or you can look on their website for any number of resources. And then for technical questions related to the application or to the system, again, grants@wholekidsfoundation.org, and then information about the Bee Grant program and Whole Kids' other grant programs on our website. So questions, we have plenty of time for any questions you guys might have. If you want to submit them in the Q&A, I know Tammy's been answering the ones that have come through. And Tammy and Emily, if you have any additional thoughts related to anything you want to share that we haven't yet said that you think would be helpful, got time for that too.
I can chime in. Thank you for presenting, Emily. That was awesome, and thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, we've gotten some really good questions, and they're the hardest ones, obviously. One that I have not had a chance to answer, it came through the chat, is, and I think this person is probably from Hawaii, because she starts with aloha, which is amazing. I wish I were there. She says, I'm a beekeeper at a nonprofit that I work with. However, I'm not on their staff. Can I fill out the application, or do they need to do it? Or is that a decision between them and myself? Please advise. So my suggestion is, if you are planning on being the bee advocate or being involved in the process in some way, I would go ahead and fill it out. Just make sure that the contact information for the beekeeper and the person who's leading the program educationally is their information is submitted. So that would be the bee advocate and the bee mentor. But the application does allow for someone to submit on someone else's behalf. You just need to make sure that you have all of their permission to do so and all of their information in order to get them signed up in the system. So you should be good to go on that. And then I've answered, let's see, we have 2 new open ones. Let's see. Is there educational material given in Spanish? The sign in Spanish would be great. And we actually had a couple of questions around providing the sign in Spanish, and we would be happy to do that. If you can just make sure that you include that in your application, and or send us a note when you accept your award, we would be glad to have. We'll have a handful of signs made in Spanish, and would be happy to include that in your materials. We also have partnered with a nonprofit, or actually it's not an official nonprofit, it's more like a high school educational group called Be a Bee in Puerto Rico, and they have translated several of our curriculum that we've created over the years. And we do not have those on our website, but we'd be happy to share those with you. They just haven't been, officially completed as far as review and gone through, a design person to fix it. But that is one of our goals this year. So we'd be happy to give you the draft versions. And then, if this is something that's really important to you, that would help us, I think, prioritize. So I see Emily making a note of that right now. So yes, so we do have a lot of our materials offered in Spanish, and we will do our best to get you finalized copies in the spring of what we can. Okay, and then someone says he has to leave early. Could we share the recording? The recording will be posted on the Because and Whole Kids Foundation's website. So you're welcome to go and take a look at that at your leisure.
There's one that came in through the chat that it looks like a dual question about the bees and the garden grant. In terms of timing on what your school's hoping to do. In case it's helpful, I was going to share, how the garden grant, the timeline of that, because I think that may dictate how you choose to apply for the bee grant, which is kind of sounding like you might want to wait until the next cycle, which we hold typically at the same time every year, sans any world circumstances like we've had in the recent past. So the garden grant application is a spring window. So that'll be February, March, with an award at the beginning of the school year. So that'll be August of 2022 would be, if you apply for the garden grant in February, March, and it's awarded, you'll receive that at the beginning of the school year. So August, September 2022. And based on what you are saying, it might make sense to do that piece first and then apply for the bee grant in our next cycle. And I say that because there is a requirement with the grant that you provide a progress report about 1 year from when your grant is received. So if you were to apply this year, with your future plans, you would be asked for a progress report not long after you received your garden grant, which it sounds like you need to do prior to starting the bee program. So if it's any help, like I said, the cycles are typically at the same time every year. So if you plan ahead, I'd be happy to offer you some resources to plan for the garden grant application. Do that in the spring, get awarded at the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year, and then apply for your future plans to get your bee program up and running in September of 2022. I hope that was helpful in your future planning. We've got a lot of great prep. We share out the garden grant application like a PDF Word document so that you can kind of see what you're signing up for and what's asked of you ahead of time. So I'd be happy to share that with you. If you email grants, we'll give you some links to some resources in a PDF and everything.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, Stephanie, from an educational standpoint, someone had asked, can we apply for the garden grant as well as the Because, the Hive grant? And there's such great companions. I think Stephanie said that from the beginning, as far as educational tools, you just can't get better bang for your buck than teaching children that these fruits and vegetables don't grow without the pollinators. So it's such a unique idea to have both of those in your garden and your backyard of either your nonprofit or your school.
There is a question here about the observation and keeping bees healthy from Katie. She says, I'm very interested in the observation hive, reason being most that I've seen in museums are not ideal. Most times the bees do not look so healthy. I'm guessing this observation hive has been very well thought out. I understand it's custom made. How long has your organization been using this observation hive model? Yes, it's actually been very successful, and every single year we modify it based on feedback that we get from our schools. We have over 500 schools that we've given bee grants to, and I would say about a third of those schools have received the observation hive. But they are tricky to maintain because to be honest, bees in general are tricky to manage. So, if you can have the proper ventilation and you can have it in a proper location and you have the proper management folks in place, and you have a healthy colony to start out with, then you're moving in the right direction. And then it's just a matter of having a well thought out plan with a beekeeper and an educator and with your students to make sure that you're staying on top of any stresses that are external that you can potentially manage. So in our grant overview document, we actually have a couple of webinars on our website for observation hive management principles and best practices. We would be happy to even just send you a couple of links of kind of tough lessons learned. But overall, the majority of our organizations that install observation hives will install a treated, thriving observation hive in the fall, and then plan on possibly feeding them through the winter. And then in the spring, the bees will start building up where the kids can see that happening, and they're very healthy. They may even swarm. And if you don't want them to swarm, then I would pull them out before the summer. And then, most of our schools do not keep them installed over the summer just because they grow so quickly. And then our new grantees, or our new award recipients, do an install with either a nuke or a package of bees in early spring, and are able to watch the bees grow through the spring. And those are usually very healthy colonies. And then most of them will take them out over the summer as well, and then treat the bees depending on philosophy, and then put in a healthy colony in the fall so that the kids can see sort of a dormant cluster of bees that you may end up having to feed over the winter. So it's very cyclical. We've learned a lot. We have great ventilation. It's only 8 deep frames. And if the key is to have a nice a working relationship with your beekeeper so that you can get ahead of any issues. Unfortunately, a lot of those observation hives that are installed in museums or in businesses, or just kind of out there for the general public in parks and rec and whatnot, out of sight, out of mind. So if they do not have active participation, active management, active engagement, then bees struggle. And so that might be what you've seen, unfortunately.
We got a few more. Cindy is wondering if the questions and answers that we have talked about today will be available. We will share a recording of the webinar. So that's one way, and it's going to be in the email that you receive, as well as on both of our websites. And then Tammy, someone had a question asking about whether the observation hives have been put outside. I wonder if maybe that was a follow-up to a previous question.
Possibly, yes. So we have had a handful of observation hives installed outside. We usually work one-on-one with those schools who have that request to really understand the driving force behind wanting them to be outside. If a school or an organization is asking for an observation hive to be installed outside because they can't maybe get approval to have it installed inside, or they're worried about having bees inside for some reason, we might guide you towards doing a Langstroth hive, because Langstroth's hives are easier to manage outside. Bees grow quickly, during different times in the year. They're very susceptible to changes in climate and whatnot. So we just want to, it's sort of the answer is dependent on, and it's a little bit trickier just because you need to provide some sort of shelter. The observation hive is weather resistant, but not necessarily weatherproof. just like a watch where, you can wear it in the shower and it's fine, but if you go swimming, it's going to die. So that's sort of a terrible example, but you don't want to you can't put it out there without some sort of a plan for a covering or an awning to protect it from wind and rain and extreme climate temperatures. So maybe we take it offline if it's something that you feel is would be a benefit to your educational program, and we'll help you decide whether that's the way to go. But to answer your question, we have done it. We probably have a dozen or so out there that are outside.
We have two really great questions. Somebody has asked what the typical survival rate for new hives over a 1-year period observation versus the outdoor hive. We'll stick with that one first, and then we'll get to the next one.
Sure. Yeah. The first part of the answer is it really depends on where you are in the country, or, where you are in Canada. Every part of the country has different statistics. I had been quoting for, all last year that that survival rates were going up for honeybees, and that we were only seeing like a 30% decline or loss of colonies. And then I spoke to someone in Portland who said that their area was experiencing a 60% loss. So it is definitely regional. And I also think that it's probably more management related than it is hive structure. The observation hive it is a unique way to manage bees, and there are some nuances, and we've tried to do a really thorough job of sharing with you the ins and outs and making sure that you are creating the most perfect installation or home for the bees that you can, whether it's an observation hive or a Langstroth hive. There are some things that are just out of your control. And so the way that I sort of explain it to folks who are trying to make a decision is, it's the total body burden as to whether the bees are going to survive. So if you can protect them from the outside elements, if you can make sure they're not getting into any sort of pesticides, if you can make sure that their entrance is protected so that no moisture gets into their hive, whether it's an inside or an outdoor hive, if you can make sure that if it's an outdoor hive, that if it's extremely cold, that you have insulation panels on it, if you can make sure that there is plenty for them to forage on over a 2 to 3 mile period, that you're doing, organized checks with a beekeeper who understands your region and when there's a nectar or pollen dearth, and then you're feeding them when there isn't enough food for them to forage on. So all of these things are components that our beekeepers kind of take into consideration. And then and hive placement is probably number one on that list. I don't even think I said that, but beehives do better when they are facing south or southeast. If you cannot make that happen, just realize that that's one of those components that's going to make it just a little bit harder for the bees to be successful. So, we have tried to document all of this information in our materials on our website. And one of the benefits of partnering with the Bee Cause is not just receiving this grant, but becoming part of our network, and not just joining our network, but having access to all of our resources and all of the other folks who have come behind, before you and gone through this. And I think it's a pretty strong community. So, our goal is to help you decide which type of grant to apply for, to get you approved, to award it to you, and then to really work with you one-on-one over the next 12 months to make sure that all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and that you have the proper foundation in place to move forward and really thrive year over year with this program. And, I think that there are going to be some hiccups, but there's a lot to learn in those hiccups as well, even with young kids. when I lost my first beehive, I spent, 24 hours trying to figure out how I could cover it up from my kids, because I didn't want my young ones to see that our bees had died. They did all the work, and they set up the equipment, and they painted everything, and they picked the spot, and they planted all the flowers and all of it. And then they just died. And, that's part of why we're doing this, is to show that there is a true plight of all pollinators, and honeybees specifically are really struggling right now. So, there are some silver linings in the lessons that we're going to learn together.
I think that's a great segue to a fantastic question we got. Someone is interested in whether or not we have educational materials about bees that can be sent to schools that are still building their bee program and may wish to apply to something such as this grant in the future. This is a fantastic question. I would love, both of you are nodding, so who
I'm going to let Emily answer this. Emily is like the rock star educator on our team. She is all about this exact question. So I'm going to let her take it from here.
Absolutely. So the Bee Cause Project, as well as Whole Kids, has lots of different resources. We do have a full curricula. We have book club. We have lesson plans. We have it all. And the easy answer to that is that you can go to thebeecause.org and look under resources, and you'll find everything there. It'll tell you exactly what you're getting yourself into, and everything is free, downloadable, printable, shareable. But we also have an OER Commons group that you can find as well. And if you'd like to email me, you can actually email educator@thebeecause.org, and I'll be happy to send you a personal invite to it. It is free. It's just easier to kind of get that invite to go to the OER, and it'll take you directly to us. Everything in there is organized with my 18-year Montessori teacher brain, like the way that I would want to access it. It's well over a year's worth of curriculum. And I think I mentioned earlier, standardized in case that's important to your entity. It might not be, but it's there if you need it. So yes, we have lots of tools, especially the literature part. I mean, it's just, kids of all ages connect with literature, and there's just so many great pieces of literature out there. And the virtual field trips are my favorite part. They all have some type of activity or science lab or something that goes with them. And you can take a virtual field trip literally from anywhere. So please feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to share more with you. Oh yes, happy to. I'm going to put my email here in the chat. It's educator@thebeecause.org. And I can send you a personal invite. Happy to do so.
Just drop some links into the chat box for both the resource library on the Bee Cause Project website, as well as the page we use to also link to the Bee Cause website. And then more specifically, I dropped a link for a PDF that speaks specifically to how to grow your bee program. So it's a really awesome one-pager, step 1 through 5, how to arrive at welcoming live bees to your campus, that was created by the Bee Cause. So that is a really great resource. We share it out with our garden grant recipients and everyone. So great. Any other questions? Thank you everyone for joining at 3:48 to potentially 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. ish your time. If anyone has any more questions, we're happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you think of something later, you can reach out to us or to Emily or to the Bee Cause.
Yes. I always put that.
And now that I'm thinking about it, I can include links to the same resources that I put in the chat into the email as well. So in case anyone missed it, or for easy access later on when you get that follow-up email, I'll include it there as well.
Excellent.
All right. Awesome. Well, Tammy and Emily, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
This is the first time we've done the Q&A like this, and it's very similar questions, but they're always nuanced. And I think sometimes it's just really nice to be able to put a face with an answer and to really be able to kind of ask a follow-up question. So we appreciate you taking your time today to visit with us. And now that you have seen our faces, please feel free to leverage the emails we've shared, and we're here to help you get through the next couple of weeks of the process.
We had one final question. Are children's museums discouraged from applying? And
I don't see why they'd be discouraged. Yeah.
I'm over here furiously typing, please apply, please apply.
Yes. We have, I can think
you.
of 6 or 8 right now that are some of our strongest programs that are in children's museums across the country. So, and part of the reason is the children's museums, it's rare. I think the majority of those kids come back year over year for programs as they grow. It's like a library for your community in a lot of ways. And so, we love that you're taking an interest in pollinator education, and, we encourage that. So yes, please apply.
Great. Well, everyone have a fantastic evening. Reach out
you.
to us with questions, comments. We look forward to receiving your applications.
Yes, thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night. Aloha.
Huzzah.